Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Ashram in Cali, Colombia, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Sleeping Sunday, or Sleeping Saturday. Thank you. I slept in. I slept till 5. I felt very, very relaxed. We all felt like good about it. And, everyone left. It was very sad. Everyone left. We had sweet goodbyes. And now a lot of them are back on the show. These guys are addicted. The fact is we get addicted to things in this world, whether it's corn chips, alcohol, smoking cigarettes, junk food, video games are really big. Adults, it's hard to believe that adults play video games, but they're into it. Yeah, Bunky says he does. But the thing is, it's understandable. So we're trying our best here to get addicted to things that lift us higher instead of waste our time, degrade us, sometimes destroy our life. So it's addiction's understandable. The mind gets fixed on things from practicing and doing it on a regular basis. But what can I get addicted to that's going to open up my heart, bring me to a higher stage of realization, help me flow in this world gracefully, in this very short life?
Getting addicted to the Bhagavatam, addicted to kirtan, addicted to prasadam.
All these Wisdom of the Sages people, they're all addicted. They're all addicted to the show. And it's beautiful to see you here. Hey, we have crazy information that we've got to share with people. We don't know what's going on. We think something's screwing around with the algorithms, but Wisdom of the Sages is getting so big in the last 3 days. It's been steadily growing. And now it's like we hit limits. Kaustubha, what are the numbers on that? Downloads yesterday.
Yesterday, over 27,000 downloads of Wisdom of the Sages.
It's 27.
That's just the audio. That's just the audio. There's more than that, but that's like blue. On the biggest day we had when the Joe Rogan thing kicked off was just under 10.
Wow.
And then some other day we had a spike where we went up to 12,000.
So that Joe Rogan thing, it was like sort of like an anomaly. It was like a spike. And then people are like, all right, we listen to the show. Okay, maybe not for me. But a lot of people stayed. A lot of people are here from that Joe Rogan show. But a lot of people just wanted to check it out. And now it's like this very peculiar high spike.
Lisa Tuttle says there was an Apple upgrade. I don't know what that means.
Apple upgrade.
It was an Apple upgrade.
All they have to do is tweak it a little, and then it just gets shown more in people's searches or something. You search wisdom, or you search yoga, or you search one of these, and all of a sudden now it's right. And people are like, why not try it? Why not try this? I really think this can change the world, Prabhu.
All right, Bhagavatam definitely is. Bhagavatam is predicted to change the world, right? It's create a revolution in the hearts.
What's really sort of beautiful when Prabhupada said this very prophetic statement. These books, the Bhagavatam, referring to the Bhagavatam, will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. Like, where have you ever met a yogi saying something like that? Like, okay, this will be the next law. He's not doing it out of his ego. He's saying the Bhagavatam is meant to be resurrected. It's been predicted to be resurrected. And it's going to be the law books. Like the law books meaning what is normal. It's a new normal. It's raising the bar for normal in our life. And we need some type of metric of what's right and wrong. People are just confused and we're just speculating on, I think this is good. I think this is good. We're going back and forth. We need some metric for what to do and what not to do.
Bhagavatam's a great place to start. Yeah. Here it is.
You're finding the quote, aren't you?
I was trying to find the quote, but I'm forgetting the exact verse. But you know that the Bhagavatam, even if imperfectly composed, right, is meant to create a revolution in the hearts of
this Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun, and it's meant to create a revolution in the hearts of mankind, something like that.
Yeah, someone, Chapuji, look that up for us. Get us that.
Look up, Chapu. Get on it, Chapu. Chapu's great. We miss her.
I want to get her right. She's like, okay.
You know, Chapu's on the show every day. I feel like, I feel like we hang out all the time. I've never met her. You know,
until now.
Until this retreat. Yeah, Adrian Colina. I like him. All these guys. Greg DeGasu. It was wonderful having all these faces. Okay. Yeah. And in today's Q&A day, by the way, if you're listening to this on Facebook, welcome. We study the Srimad Bhagavatam every day, but Saturday do we questions and answers, and Sunday we have a guest. And tomorrow's guest is Sri Prahlad. He grew up in, his parents were devotees from Australia, and he's got a really, really good story. He went to like the Gurukul. He grew up in the Indian Gurukul in the old days. So he's been traveling. He's a very big kirtan leader and singer.
He's a legend.
He's a legend.
Right?
He's a legend.
From his youth, he was a kirtan legend. And brilliant guy.
And we're going to pick his brain tomorrow and get all the nectar. Now he's living in Cyprus with his wife, and he's like very impressive. He's a very impressive guy. I did a kirtan with him in Australia once.
Okay,
it was quite wonderful.
You know what else we have to mention? Yes, Raghu. Was a very important spiritual figure, passed away yesterday, or even today. Or was it yesterday or today? And that was Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk, right? He passed away at the age of 95 yesterday.
At 95?
We offer our respects to him, you know. Special soul.
Special souls in this world. Mara, it's got an announcement here, by the way.
Bhakti Recovery Group meeting today at 9:30 a.m. Do you still have spaces available on your pilgrimage to Nepal?
Yes, I do. Nepal is happening, people. It's March 13th through March 25th, trekking through the Himalayas. And last year we did the shows live from the Himalayas. Wasn't the best reception, but we did it. And it was really magical because sometimes you're trekking and you're charmed by the yaks and the cliffs and the little cottages and the fresh air and the serenity of it all. But for some reason, it might be cloudy and you don't see the Himalayas. And on day 3, the clouds cleared and it was like everybody was just awestruck. And it's like we compared it to what it must be like if you're chanting your japa and you're going through your spiritual sadhana. And then one day Krishna just appears to you. Krishna has always been there. He just chooses to appear to you one day. What do you think about that? That's what it was like. So anyway, we're psyched. We got a cool little group right now. But if you're interested, check that out, www.raghunath.yoga, and go to the Nepal pilgrimage. Yeah, I'm excited.
Hold on. Karuna says she knows this verse. Should we check in on her?
Karuna knows it in Sanskrit? Unmute her. This is our 8-year-old listener on Zoom. By the way, if you want to join us on Zoom, you can do it. We got 25,000 downloads. We could have 25,000 people on Zoom, I think. That would be great.
I didn't know any verse. It's a song I learned from a Zoom. It's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's as bright as the sun.
Wow.
Okay.
So a little song.
We're going to give you credit for that.
Nice.
Not a verse. Not a verse.
It's not a verse.
Okay.
It's a rhyme.
But maybe work on that verse, Karunaji. Okay, that'd be a good one to learn. I think it's
Which
text.
This is the first canto.
It's Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 3rd chapter, text number 43.
First canto, third chapter.
Wait. It's on the board right
Text
here.
43.
Right?
Yeah, I got it. That's where I'm reading from.
Okay.
But actually, someone else
Oh,
is
yeah.
saying it's 1511. Jeffrey Ackler's saying so. But
Read
no, this
that.
is the one I was looking for. 1343. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun. Oh no, they're two different ones. These are both really good. Okay.
Right.
First, this is 1343. This Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna for his own abode, accompanied with dharma and knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana, right? But I was actually thinking of the other one, which is 1511. I can pull that up, but it might just take me a minute.
We'll wait.
All right. We'll talk about something while I'm doing this because we have a little dead air.
We got to get some Vrindavan dust in there. You know, Covetous Designs. You see this that Mara's wearing
You
from
went right to the
covetoudesigns.com? Yeah, we're going to throw an advertisement for Covetous. Our friend Jai Sri Triolo, who creates the chant camp with me in California. She makes these beautiful things. So we got this one for Mara for Christmas.
Mhm.
And she's still got nothing in it
She
yet.
loves
So it's
it.
sort of like a voidist. Right now, it's not a full Krishna conscious one. It's sort of like this impersonal void.
Get something in there, Mara.
Get something in there, Mara, quick.
Okay, I got the verse. That literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, form, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation, full of transcendental words, directed toward bringing about a revolution in the, you could say, it says impious in the bad karmic lives of the world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified people who are thoroughly honest.
You know what? That brings me to another interesting person that was here on the Wisdom of the Sages retreat, whom we all love. Happy
Yep.
Girl Kitchen's own Jamuna Jelly.
Yep.
So Happy Girl Kitchen, Jamuna, she makes this incredible jams and spicy jams and stuff like that. It's not, I'm saying because this is, I'm not throwing out advertisements. I'm advertising Jamuna Jelly. What happened? She said, I said, how'd you get into Bhakti anyway? She goes, I studied revolutionaries at the university.
Okay.
And I thought it was really cool. And I liked the idea of changing the world for the better. But then I read the biography of Prabhupada and I thought, this is a real revolution.
Okay, good. I buy that one.
Okay.
And you put it in a commercial too.
All right. And I put in a commercial.
All right, let's get into it, Raghu. It's getting late.
Ryan, no, we don't do that
We don't do
today.
that today.
Questions.
Oh, so
Okay,
I'll
we're going to start with
off.
some questions. Yeah.
This is a question for the both of us, okay?
Okay.
And this is great. I was really happy to receive this question. This is coming from a really dear friend of mine, really great friend, Bhaktivatsala Das. He and I, he's an Australian, but he and his brother, when they were young, like teenagers, they moved to London. They were into the whole punk scene. When we were into the hardcore scene in New York, they were into the punk scene in London. And then he got into Krishna consciousness. He and his brother both got into Krishna consciousness in Germany somehow. I think they were traveling through Germany and they just got into it and they moved in. They became monks in Germany while we were in America. And then in '93, I went to Germany. I spent 6 months there and stayed with them. And it was great spending time with Bhaktivatsala and his brother Rameshwar. And then Bhaktivatsala and I went on to do different kind of services in the future. So we became very close, but I haven't seen him since, over 20 years probably.
Yeah.
So I miss him dearly, but I was happy to get this question. He's listening every day.
That's great. They reconnect with us through the show. I've met so many old friends of us at the ashram.
Yeah.
All right, let's hear the question.
So this is what he
Prabhu.
writes. He says, I would really like to ask you a question that is short and succinct without too much waffle. Unfortunately, non-waffle is not part of my repertoire. It's like an international house of waffles here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He says, I lived in the ashram for around 10 years, and it seemed at the time that becoming involved in larger administrative services compromised my ability to focus on my internal spiritual life. Interesting, right? I also felt a little torn, considering that living a sheltered and cloistered spiritual practice ignored the realities of living in the world and the challenges of reconciling spiritual practices with functioning within a materialistic society. Since moving away from the ashram and ashram friends, my spiritual life has fallen off. though I always feel connected in my heart with Krishna and think of myself as a bhakta or as a Bhakti-yogi. You always say that, Raghunath, right? It's like a hook.
What do
Don't
I
you?
say?
You always
What
say
do I
like
say?
once the hook is in you, you can't get it out, right?
Yeah, that fish hook.
Yeah.
A Krishna little hook in your heart.
Yeah.
We got
he
it.
go-
I'm sure people here on Zoom have that little Krishna fish hook.
Yeah.
It says Krishna's just reeling us in. And I'm fighting it. I'm fighting that fish. I'm going to get away. Like every fish thinks he's going to get away. They're not getting away.
You're squirming, you're flapping,
You're flapping, you're arguing.
He says, on that note, since becoming an other about a year ago, since listening to Wisdom and Sages about a year ago, I have listened pretty much daily to your podcast, and it really has helped me refocus on spiritual practices. Can you please, here comes a question, and we'll both take this one, Raghunath. Can you please say a little bit about the benefits and pitfalls of ashram life versus the benefits and pitfalls of practicing bhakti while fulfilling material obligations within greater society? That's the question. And then he says, P.S. I cannot help but look back on those ashram years as a total highlight of my life and the friends I made there. And the life lessons learned are constantly in my mind. Love, peace, and spiritual strength. Bhakti-vatsala.
That's beautiful.
Love it.
Bhakti-vatsala Prabhu, thank you for sharing that. And there definitely are pitfalls in living in an ashram, and I don't recommend it to most people. But I will say that it was the best time of my life. It was the best time. I lived in an ashram even longer than I was a brahmachari because I stayed there longer after I was a brahmachari. So I lived in it probably maybe 7 years total. And that's a long time. I mean, in 7 years, you could become, 10 years, you could become a lawyer, you could got a master's degree. And that was sort of like my education. And it's sometimes depending on the ashram, it could be completely dysfunctional, But I will say the bonds you make are so good that for a guy growing up in American culture, I got to relearn Vedic culture as if I grew up in an ashram, so to speak. You learn the songs, you learn the music, you learn and you learn to bond. Now, of course, there's a bunch of baggage that goes with an ashram. But before I even get to the baggage, just you saying, hey, I traveled in Germany. I lived in Germany for 6 months and, rendered service. It's like, we've got to travel. I've lived in ashrams all over the world. I got to travel to India so many times in my life. The ashram kept me out of trouble, kept me focused, kept me not deviated from my spiritual path. The high intensity focus of the ashram kept me really in my spiritual joy and gave me anchors that will change me for the rest of my life. The pitfalls are sometimes you get into administration of an ashram and you might not even be qualified to be the administration. People just like, okay, you got to do this. We need somebody to do this. You're in charge of this. That happened a lot in the old days. Most people in the old days, they opened up ashrams. No one was qualified for anything, really. They were dropouts or college dropouts, and they just sort of like pieced their lives together, pieced the ashram together. Didn't know about managing people, managing children, managing families who want to live in an ashram. And it was confusing, and it was sometimes we sort of gave up on our material life, and therefore when we had to re-enter the material life, we had no skill set. It's not like the material world is, IBM is looking for people who know how to do RT ceremonies. It's like we were like completely maybe lost. So that was sort of a downside. I had a very, very positive experience, and I had very, very in the ashram, I can only say. But at the same time, it's not for everybody. I'm from a whole different school. I encourage the people to stay where they are. And I feel like that's part of our mission right now is to create immersion experiences where you can feel that experience. I felt like there was time wasted for me. If I was to do it all over again, I'd do it like I'm doing it, how we do it now. You go away and you study, like we're about to start this Kirtan Academy. You go away and you just study music. You go away and you study philosophy. You go away for an immersion and you go to all the holy places in India and you really start to get India. You get how to enter the Dham. You go through all those things that took us months to figure out, and we concentrate it. And that's why I think we're going to do it Super Soul. We're going to start like a monthly ashram experience. Want to live in an ashram for a month? come stay for a month. And then you go back to your regular life. And we try to keep it at a reasonable price, but you get that feeling where you get sort of trained like you've been living in an ashram. And those create some scars like Bhakti-yogi has in his mind, how he's reflecting right now. Because in reality, there is no normal life. Life is whatever you have. If you live in an ashram your whole life, I got news for you. It's normal. You know, if you grew up in a school in a gurukul or whatever, and you have good experiences or really negative experiences, I got news for you. I went to public school and I had tons of good experiences and tons of traumatic experiences. That's just how I grew up as well. And so that's just like the roll of dice, how life leaves us. And it's sort of what we make out of it. But I've went through periods, and I'm sure you can say this too, Kaustubha, where you're like a new devotee. You're like, I love being around devotees. And then you sort of get jaded. You take people for granted. You're like, I'm sick of working with devotees. And you're like, I want to work with non-devotees. They have their lives together. And then you work with non-devotees. You're like, what am I doing with all these non-devotees? I want to work with devotees again. And that's sort of where I'm at.
I don't care how crazy it gets.
I don't care how crazy they are. Everybody's crazy. It's the material world. Anyway, so yes, I think exactly his thing is bringing up where I feel like what we're trying to move towards with some of the sages is recreating ashram experiences in superfood doses where people continue with their lives and to the degree they want to get more serious, they start to transform. You know, and I think a lot of people are getting into this not at 17 like you and I were, but at 40 after they've had deep life experiences, been married, maybe been divorced, had some death, had some, flood of income. Had some death. We've had some death. You know, they experienced someone die. You know, big life shifts. What do you think? What do you think about that?
I agree with you. There's so much. I think we could have done the whole show just on this question. You know, it's such a big question, important question, and it becomes relevant to everybody that starts to get into deep into bhakti. They may be thinking, particularly if they're listening to Wisdom of the Sages, and you and I are talking about our time living in the ashram and how it affected us, and a lot of people are thinking, do I need that? Did I miss out on something? Is there any way for me to get that? And then you have Bhakti-yogi, he's coming from the other perspective where he did that, and it does have its pros and cons. There's a few things I want to say, and first of all, I know about Bhakti-yogi's trajectory a bit, and I know he went through some unique challenges, some very unique challenges, and I think it's just natural that anybody that went through the challenges that he went through would likely, to some degree or another, probably to a large degree, kind of remove themselves from that scene. And it would be very hard not to have some kind of, I don't know if bitterness is the right word, but some kind of letdown, some kind of serious letdown which affects you. So when he says, how did he phrase it, that my spiritual life fell off a lot since I left the ashram? Honestly, in his example, in his own life, and in the lives of a lot of people that make that move, the way that I see it is just like we're all on these different trajectories, moving forward, to that point of Krishna prema, to that point of full enlightenment. And some of those trajectories are like kind of more smooth and straight, and some of them are more bumpy. But like, you really can't judge one as being better than the other. If in the heart someone's moving forward in that direction. Did you read Siddhartha? Raghu, did I ask you that recently? Did you read the book Siddhartha or Herman Hesse?
Years ago. I can't really remember it that well.
That book had to do with, Siddhartha was the main character, but his friend was Govinda, and they kind of left home and they went through different kind of spiritual communities and different practices, and then they meet the Buddha, right? They meet Buddha, and Govinda's completely blown away with him, and Siddhartha is very impressed with him, but Siddhartha decides that he's not going to stay there and study under him, and Govinda stays with him. And then Siddhartha goes through this whole path of like, he goes back into materialistic society, he connects with a prostitute, falls in love with her, goes into the business world, and gradually his spiritual life starts to, dissipate. Until he gets to like, he's almost like sickened by it. And then he goes through a whole existential kind of thing, and then he simplifies everything, and he goes back in his spiritual life but with a different angle, and eventually he becomes enlightened. And then eventually he runs into Govinda, who, even though he was kind of like living that ashram life, hadn't found enlightenment yet. And then he kind of gives it to Govinda. I'm going to
reread that book.
It's a great book. A lot of what I'm just kind of breezing over really fast. I really love the way Herman Hesse writes, and I love the way that he expresses a lot of truths in his books. I don't exactly buy into the way he laid everything out there. I don't see it as truly authentic, honestly. But at the same time, it's illustrating an important point, is that we all have these different trajectories, and some of them are bumpy and some of them are smooth, some of them are straight, and some of them are a little bit windier. And with someone like Bhaktivatsal, with his knowledge, with his devotion, with his heart, with knowing him, I don't doubt in any way that he's not moving, very, that this life will be a very successful life towards Krishna, praying for him. So I want to throw that out. But let's look at it this way. I think within the Hare Krishna movement, the way that you and I entered into ashrams, and in a lot of the other spiritual communities out there, I would imagine it's very similar. You enter into an ashram, but there's not necessarily like clear agreements about like, this is why I'm going in here and this is what I'm agreeing to take part of, and they're saying this is what you're going to walk away with,
Right. It's sort of like you just join, and then there's like an arrow, and it just goes on forever.
Just keep going that way.
Just keep going. There was no like exit strategy. It was
exactly. Yeah. And so like if you take traditional brahmachari ashram, although there were exceptions of people that would stay renunciates and not get married and enter back into society, by far it was expected that really your monk life was a preparation for married life, and that means a preparation for business life and a preparation for being a husband, being a wife, being a business person, being a parent. It was meant to give you values and a dharmic understanding that you would carry into that world. I personally, like, you and I are trying to put stuff together, and in the Bhakti Center is also trying to put stuff together, and I really think it should be really clear when you enter into that ashram, whether you're going to stay for 2 weeks or whether you're going to stay for a year or 2 years, 5, whatever it's going to be, it should be clear what the curriculum is. What exactly is it that you're meant to walk away with? And I would say that this is, in a good bhakti ashram, this is what I would expect someone to learn. That they should learn Shastra, right? They should learn these texts, but they should learn Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and maybe some other important texts.
And we're trying to cover that base with our shloka study classes and stuff like
studies,
that.
Yeah,
right?
things like that. Yeah.
We're trying to cover all these things, but
even like a lot of the things I'm going to mention, we just covered in our last, at least to some degree, in the retreat that we just had, right? And
right.
In the fall. So I think we should learn scripture. You should learn these sacred texts. You should learn some basic ritual. You should learn how to do puja and the meaning of it. And what are the meaning of the different rituals? What is temple worship? How does it done? There's a lot to that about cleanliness and punctuality and so on. You should learn cooking. It's a very important part of the bhakti culture. It's a real essential part. You should learn, to some degree, you should learn music. You should learn how to lead a kirtan or participate in kirtan. You should learn the cultural etiquette within that yoga tradition, particularly within the bhakti tradition, because that's going to be important for you to advance on this path. You should know it. You should understand it. You should understand why it's important. You should learn how to perform some austerity, rising early and controlling your senses and so on. And how to sacrifice, how to give of yourself, how to become a servant, because really that is what it is that we're trying to cultivate. So I would say that if someone has an ashram, these kind of things should be clarified. And when someone's coming in, it should be clear, this is what you're going to walk out with. Here's our curriculum, or how you're going to learn these things and practice these things. And but also that ashram should be alive, and there should be characters that you meet, and experiences that you have that will serve.
We've met characters.
No, but
we had a guy.
Right?
We had this great guy in the ashram. Remember Dr. Richard?
Yes, I do remember Dr. Richard.
Dr. Richard, he used to come, because sometimes the ashram, they just take anybody. And I like Dr. Richard, but he was slightly essential. He would tape a jewel to his forehead. It was pretty cool.
In Philadelphia, I remember.
Remember Dr. Richard?
And he would dance enthusiastically before the
like enthusiastically, like you might get hurt if you go near him. That type of enthusiasm, like it had like an energy to him. Okay, go on.
But my point is, like you and I, we have a whole list of characters that help us understand what it means to be a devotee, what it means to be a Vaishnava, what it means to be a Bhakti-yogi, that inspire us. And we're taken to places and shown the significance of these places and so on. And those things, they lodge themselves in your heart and they stay there. As Bhaktivatsala is saying himself, right? I look back at that as the best time of my life, and those things are always in his mind, even though he's out working in the world and not in such a tight community right now.
Yeah.
So that's what an ashram should provide. You should know, you should have an idea of how long you're going in, when you plan to come out, and how you're going to learn those things. And I think if ashrams really focus on that, they'll do a fantastic job. And we'll be sending people out into the world that really have a great spiritual background, that'll have a progressive spiritual life themselves, and they'll be able to help others. Now what Bhagavatam also mentioned was, he said...
Can I butt in one essential thing an ashram should do also is,
let's take our time with this.
It should be, there should be menial service that has nothing to do with what you're good at.
Surrender.
Like some type, like, all right, I'm going to scrub this gigantic pot, even though I'm a brain surgeon. You need to do like like you're rendering some menial service, and it just makes the heart. It brings you right out of your material persona and your roles in this world with your role in the spiritual world. I'm a soul, and I just want to render service to the whole. I'm small, and I want to give something to the whole. And there's something about doing something that you're not even good at, but you want to be part of something bigger. It's very powerful, and it's sometimes very humbling. And I think that's a great part of ashram life too. You're just doing the needy.
Yeah. That's I mentioned sacrifice. Austerity, sacrifice.
Okay.
Those things. No, but you illustrated it well. It was important that you said that. But that is part of what it means to be a brahmachari, right? What is a brahmachari? There's all these verses, right? They go out into the forest, they collect wood to serve the guru. It's like you become a servant. You give up your independence. You say, okay, I'm on the program. Tell me what to do.
For most Americans, that's like the worst thing I could ever do. Give them my independence.
I know, but that is what it's part of what it's all about. And so now Bhaktivatsala, he said, I lived in the ashram for around 10 years, and it seemed at the time that becoming involved in larger administrative services compromised my ability to focus on my internal spiritual life. And this brings up a very important principle. And I'm going to say this, when I say this, I want to say this without any kind of condemnation or, condescension.
This is going to be good. Ready? This is going to be...
But it's hard to run an ashram. There's financial pressures, and there's pressures to, there's all kinds of burden that a manager of an ashram takes on their shoulders. And that burden it'll create a dynamic whereby the people within that ashram, they see as resources to get done what needs to get done, right? There's institutional concerns, administrative concerns, even like missionary concerns. And so it's a great challenge not to begin to see the people in the ashram as your resources for accomplishing those things. And you begin to lose the focus that the purpose of this was their spiritual experience and training, So
said,
right?
Well
said. So you get caught up, in taking care of that place and earning money for that place and making sure the floors are mopped and this and that. What you said was important. It's good for us to scrub the pots. It's good for us to mop the floor, but if the person that's running the ashram is saying, yeah, it's good for them, and it's just focused on it, and they're not concerned enough about providing all the rest of the things we're speaking about, then it can be an empty experience, and it can lead to feelings of exploitation and so on. So it's a fine line, It's not an easy line to walk. One really important lesson I learned along the road, one really important principle I saw along the road, and this is spiritual life takes faith. It takes saying, what, materially that doesn't add up, but spiritually it makes perfect sense, and we need to embrace it, we need to take that risk. But the principle, and this is a principle that Raghunath Swami articulated very clearly in his Chowpatty temple in Mumbai, and you really see how it flourishes. And that is that for the managers of ashrams, they really need to think first about the individuals and the experiences that they're having, and and have the faith that if we invest our time and our energy for caring for this person's spiritual life, then the result will be that the administrative and missionary and, you know, all the other financial concerns, they will be taken care of, you know. And just to give a simple illustration of how in one way it works, right? Like say you have an ashram and people are coming through that ashram. Every year there's people coming in, every year there's people going out. But because you're so worried about making money and, you know, paying the bills and all that they never really had a great experience. And when they leave just a little bit jaded.
Yeah.
And they're no longer really part of your community. Whereas if you really invest time and energy in them, and then when they leave the ashram, they love their experience so much, they become like your financial supporters, right? Because they believe in what you're doing. And so that principle that like don't think first of the institution, but first think of caring for the spiritual lives of the people. It's a powerful, dynamic spiritual principle. You know, there has to be faith in that. So I get, I totally get Bhaktivatsal's thing. You know, this is also, and you started speaking about this, and I thought I would say a little bit more about this because I think this speaks to part of his question. And I've mentioned this on the show before, but it's something that I think for you and I, Raghunath, it became crystallized in our vision through doing the show, is that we see a lot of people come to Bhakti at a later point in life. We read an interesting, was it just yesterday that we read where Prabhupada said, even if one comes to Bhakti as a late comer, you know, they're sure to have success. So we saw that, you know, we got into Bhakti at an early age, around 20 years old, right? And that was before marriage, that was before children, that was before going into the work world and building a career and all that. So you're kind of like free to fully immerse in it. And that's a powerful dynamic. It gives you, you know, an opportunity to get a deep experience. But now we're seeing a lot of people coming in their mid-30s and their early 40s, right? I think the largest part of our listenership is in the 35 to 45 age range. Right. And so you get into Bhakti at that age, you're already married, you already have a career, you have children, maybe you've been divorced, maybe you've gone through like a lot of pain in life, you know. A lot of the idea of what your life would be never manifested, or manifested in a different way than you thought, and now you're kind of locked into the world just like everybody else in the world, you know, taking care of a home, paying the bills, you know, feeling the pains of the work life. I'm not satisfied with my career. You know, my marriage and family life has been difficult or painful or disastrous, or, you know, so many different things. But at that point, the pain of material life and so on has led me to the idea that there's got to be something more, and I really want to find that. Now I'm stuck in certain situations, right? I still got bills to pay, I still got kids to raise, I still got, you know, circumstances that I need to deal with, but I'm really eager. And if you take someone with that life experience and that eagerness, and then you blend in the philosophy of Bhagavatam and Bhakti, that becomes a very potent mix.
It can make rapid evolution. And then you miss out on the whole dysfunctional thing. We left the ashram with what do we do with our lives? You know, I think we were fortunate because, as you expressed this thing, Kaustubha is a unique character because he's a very straight shooter. He's on the speedboat, and I'm just an extremist. So I think when people get extreme, people like me, I'm going to move into the ashram, you know, and it's extreme. And I'm not hating on myself for being extreme. It's just what I am. And I'm more like a zigzagging road back to Krishna. As long as it's back to Krishna, you don't want to be extreme towards things that are going to wreck your life. And I was lucky that I had a music career when I got out of the ashram. So for me, it wasn't so hard to figure my footing in the material world. And Kaustubha was just always sort of like lived this sort of Brahminical life in the ashram and outside of the ashram. But I can sympathize with Bhaktivatsal for, okay, I gave my life to the ashram. I gave up that time of my life where I should have been in the university or should have learned certain skills in the material world. And now I'm going out in the material world. Like, what do I know? So there is a problem with that. And there's a benefit of the Wisdom of Sages community who are just sort of like living their life in the material world and figuring now at this point, now how can I become more spiritually focused outside of this world.
Right.
You and I also entered an ashram at a very peculiar state historically, where there were no elders. Our elders were 17 years older than us, and it was one of these things. Now people can come in to an ashram, and there's actually people who've been practicing for 40 or 50 years, and they can give guidance with life lessons that they've been through. They're old men or old ladies who've had children and now have grandchildren and have added bhakti to their life, but were born in Western families. That's huge. Sometimes it's hard to relate to Indians for a Western person, because America's got all these temptations that they never had to face up with in India in 1970, or it just wasn't like that. So I think if you're getting into bhakti now, it's a very, very great time to get into it. There's layers of seniors, elders to listen from. And it's sort of like what we missed out, and what American culture misses out oftentimes on, who are the elders of the community, where sometimes you feel like, I got to babysit my dad, or I got to babysit my mom, or, I don't have anybody to look up to. And we need that. We need people we can say, hey, I've got a question. I've got a question in my life. There's a big fork in my life about marriage, about divorce, or about, my career opportunities, or about my spiritual life. What do you think I should do? We need people like that in our life. And I think people getting into it now is better than ever. Although I wouldn't trade in my experience for anything.
Well, just to continue on this point a little bit, that these trajectories, some of them are straighter, some of them are bendier, right? Some of them are bumpier, some of them are smoother. Some of them are messier, and some of them are neater, But I think what Bhagavatam shows us is that they're all valid. And it's not even necessarily that one is more effective or more pleasing to Krishna than the other. We see messy examples, in Bhagavatam and so on. And I think in particular in this age, there's a lot more messy than neat.
Right.
But that idea that, you see, because this is another important thing to consider. It's easy to mistake renunciation for devotion. In the path of bhakti, we don't see the goal as renunciation, detachment from material things. That's not the goal. It may be helpful towards the goal, but it's not the goal. The goal is love, right? The goal is love for God. And, like when you and I first became monks, we're young. It seems clear to us, you read these books and it says, well, okay, the goal of life is bhakti. Material attachments are diversions, they're distractions. Avoid them, just walk away from them. And if someone hasn't done that, then they haven't understood it as well as us. They're not as serious as us. They're not,
Right.
It's easy to buy into that kind of thinking. Now I'll be frank, I bought into that kind of thinking, at least to some degree, in my younger, years. Now the way that I look at it is, someone can be like renounced in the sense that they're living in an ashram, they're not married, right? They're celibate, they have a bank account, right? They have no money and so on. And they're thinking they're very spiritually advanced because they don't need these things like everybody else needs these things. They're avoiding these distractions. But the fact is that the struggles that you go through in life, as a married person, the responsibility that you have to take, the disappointments that you go through, the heartbreak that you experience, that is powerful. Like if you can put that all in the right context, you can really make huge advancements in terms of your devotion, your love, where you really get the feeling like, dear God, in my heart, you've been giving me this message about life, about this world, about who you are, about who we are together, and everything that you're saying I've experienced is true, that when I turn my back on you, when I ignore you, when I'm distracted from you, ultimately, even when things seem like they're going to be great, there's pain and there's suffering, and that suffering, I've had enough of it in life, and the joy that I have when I'm connecting with you, it's giving me a vision of what my life is meant to be, and I want that, and I want that deep, and that yearning right there, that is real spiritual life, and it's not necessarily the whereas it's possible that the more externally renounced monk in the ashram isn't feeling that intensity of spiritual desire, that depth of communication with God in the heart and so on. So, there's, as Bhakti's saying, there's pros and cons in both. I think it's great that people get a year, 2 years, or at least periodic experiences of ashram life. Learn the kind of things we're talking about. Master one or two of them,
I want to see a show of hands on the message board who would like the Super Soul Wisdom of the Sages 1 month ashram immersion. I'd like to see some feedback.
We got to do it.
Yeah. Hey, guess who showed up? Matt Godin.
Oh,
Matt Godin from
Matt
Syracuse,
Godin,
right? Matt Godin? Ithaca. Welcome.
Oh, hands are going up, Raghu. Hands are going up.
All right, the hands are going up. All right, this is great. Now it's 8:52, Kaustubha. That was a great question.
I told you we could spend the whole show on that one question. Right?
I know.
Yeah.
We have to end sharp too today. Do we have any time for any other questions?
I'm going to read you a question, Raghu, okay?
All right.
From Cameron.
Cameron Diaz.
And so, Bhakti, I hope that was helpful. And I'd love to talk to you and reconnect with you sometime soon.
Cameron Diaz.
Not Cameron Diaz.
No, Cameron Diaz used to be. I used to take yoga with her.
Really?
Yeah.
You took yoga with her like she was teaching?
She was in my class with me.
You were teaching?
No, I wasn't teaching. I was studying. We were both students. Who was doing Ashtanga.
Okay. How was her
pretty
scorpion
good.
pose?
Pretty good.
All right.
We didn't do.
Okay. So here's a question for you. First, there's a message to the WhatsApp team, and I wanted to read it because I think Cameron's really getting it. It's like snapping into place for him.
That was yoga in LA, man. You never know who's just going to walk into the class,
Ashtanga yoga in New York was like that too.
You never know. What? David Duchovny.
Is that how you put it? Okay, you ready?
Been to my class a few times. Yes.
Okay. To Raghunath and the Wisdom of the Sages team, I want to express this has come from Cameron. I want to express my deep appreciation for all of you, for the time and effort you dedicate to sharing and educating on Bhakti. I found your podcast because I recently heard Raghunath's episode on Rich Roll.
All right. Rich Roll.
He seems like a really great guy, that Rich Roll.
Rich Roll's a great guy. Yes. He is a great guy. You should listen to that podcast. It goes hand in hand with what we're doing here.
Okay. So he says, coming to your podcast, I was really taken with your reading and dissection of the Bhagavatam. It really touched me in a way that no other religious text has before, and I find your lighthearted discussions very warming and amusing. I have been on a spiritual path for a while, seeking tools for self-exploration and betterment, and while I have found much fascination and knowledge in things like the mind metaphysics of Ernest Holmes, to the spiritual teachings of Chogyam Trungpa.
Yeah,
I hope I pronounced that correctly.
You got it.
Amongst other things. While I have found much value in these things, and it seems to me like he's just totally understanding it right.
Right.
While I have found much value in these things, and they have certainly helped me develop spiritually, they have left me with a feeling that there has to be more, right? That's that sweet baby Krishna right there.
Yeah.
Individually, all these ideas I've encountered so far to me lack fullness. He's right on it, right? It's not that they're not good, not that they're not beautiful, not that they're not helpful, but it's still not the full kind of spiritual development. So he says, together they can support and fill in where another lacks, but then it becomes just a muddled patchwork that has no central foundation. I also realized after some time that there is a central devotion to and practice of love that they all lack. It sounds like the four Kumars, like just, smelling the Tulsi at the feet of Lord Vishnu, right? While their ideas encourage those things, they do not explicitly advocate it as a means to an end. I needed to find something with a practice that can teach me and support me in building that love of a higher power and express it with the world. So I have had my ears up, and that is when I found Wisdom of the Sages. Prior to your podcast, I knew pretty much nothing and have had no experiences with Hinduism. After some time, I decided to subscribe to get more. I was so curious, and I have been watching Kaustubha Das's How Srimad Bhagavatam Clarifies Everything. He's the perfect guy for this. He's just exactly where he's at is exactly what the course was about. And it has been so incredibly enlightening, and I love learning about it. Honestly, it has been blowing my mind. Until now, I have never felt compelled towards any form of religion. Bhakti certainly presents itself to be wholly developed spiritual path that I've been searching for. Always, I just wanted to extend my gratitude for everything you all do. It really means a lot to me, and I only just arrived. It was a long week, and I've had a couple of days that I felt particularly grim, and hearing your show definitely helped lift me up. Thank you for everything. Okay, thank you, Cameron, for that. It means a lot to me hearing that, to see someone totally getting it, you know.
My spiritual path was like that too. It's like a salad bar, you know. I'll take a little fruit. I'll take a little spaghetti. I'll take a little Chinese food. It's like a little pieces of wisdom everywhere. And it just didn't or what do I do with all this stuff now? How do I create a life with all these little, I want a system. I want a freeway. How can I move forward? How can I engage my senses? How do we piece all these valuable pearls together? How do we string them together?
Okay. So here's this question for you, Raghunath. What are some daily practices that you can recommend that I can start to incorporate into my daily life to help me start building a closer relationship to God? Please be as specific as possible.
Very specific. Chanting the holy name. This is very powerful. Chanting the holy name, make a commitment on your malas to chant the Hare Krishna mantra 1 round on your beads. That's 108 times on beads. And do it in a focused way where you can really focus, really hear the name, and do it in a mood.
Oh, Raghunath frozen over here. Do it in a mood of... Oh, no, he's frozen for a long time.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you said do it in a mood of...
Calling Krishna into your life.
Okay. Yeah, we're having a tough time with you, Raghu. So his first one was to chant the holy name. I think he means... there's 2 ways that one can chant. That is kirtan, which it's helpful to have a community that practices that, but also chanting japa on beads. Okay, Raghunath, you're back.
Sorry.
Yeah, in a mood of calling Krishna into your heart.
Yeah. If it's not our show, it's reading the Srimad Bhagavatam or sacred literature every day. And of course, you guys got to figure out the parameters of how much you can do that. You might say, I got a lot of time. I'll put time aside. But make it sacred time every day. For a lot of us, the podcast is really useful because you can download a podcast. You can listen to it on the way to work. Or like the Zoomers like to just sit and listen. Some people like to multitask and they're on their jogging machine listening, or some people are shopping, or they got the kids in the car ignoring their kids. Just kidding. But yes. And so there's a benefit of podcasts, or if it's not this podcast, YouTube. There's so many good lectures on YouTube. Where the information age has 0.1% positive information. So dig that stuff up and make a commitment to finding a community. We fortunately have this big community right here people are part of. And then go into some weekend immersions, perhaps find a local temple and find devotees that you can personally jive with and relate with on a regular basis. It's 9:00. I know we're on a tight time thing today, but that's a great question. Thank you. I hope that was
Cameron,
useful.
Just reach out to us more with anything you need. We'll be happy to try to help you.
We are here for you. Thanks, everybody, for joining us on Facebook. Hey, Facebook people, join us. First, go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get podcasts, or YouTube, and listen, binge listen, and download the podcast and become a regular listener, or join us live on Zoom every morning. It's usually 5 a.m., 6 a.m., sometimes 8 a.m. It varies, but email us, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and Mara will send you the secret codes. Thanks, everyone, joining us. We got to get out early because a yoga class is about to go on, but we love you, and it's a beautiful day for a beautiful day. Welcome, Matt Godin. Let the Kirtan Academy begin. Haribol.